heads into those endgames. And here we go, David. The game is starting.
The game has started, and it's a King's Pawn Open. It's the Italian game, signified by White bringing out his bishop on this last move to this square, and Black does the same. Very standard stuff, and an opening actually Nepomniachtchi did employ in the World Championship match against Magnus Carlsen. He studied this in depth, that is clear. However, it's also Andrey Esipenko's favourite opening when he has White, so a really interesting battleground now for the two players. Both sides now have castled their king away to safety, and the game will slow down for a while as both sides manoeuvre. White just pushing a pawn there. Black will most likely do the same. There we go. And yeah, it's all about planning here, all about who can put their pieces on better squares, who can maybe break out in the centre later most efficiently. So yeah, I just think Nepomniachtchi wants to avoid any opening battle here. It's just about understanding, just about putting those pieces on good squares. Logical chess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this position, I have to admit, for myself, and probably, you know, even much higher rated players than me, is so complex to understand. There's so many subtleties and so many little pawn moves like this to stop your opponent's bishop coming out. It's a real manoeuvring game. Probably one of the openings which requires the most slow manoeuvring out of any opening I can think of. And for someone who doesn't play these positions, it's so hard to get the right move order right. You know, you've got to play to give your pieces squares, to get your pieces in the right position. But even here, does this remind me? Did you have this position?
He did have this position.
Yeah,
he had it against Ali Reza Firouzja.
Yeah, and I think I was commentating on that with our friends Lawrence Trent and Ali Mortazali, and we were obviously cheering for you.
Thank you.
And I remember some idea with the Queen coming over, you know, around to the Queen side. But so you're obviously a bit of an expert in this position, more so than me, clearly. Anyway.
Yeah, you would think that, Simon, but I'm the same as you. Despite having played these positions with White and with Black from my entire career since I was 5-6 years old, I still struggle with them. And the game has now left the same path as my game against Firouzja. Black's knight retreat a couple of moves ago was the big difference there, but either way, this position is still relatively known, I think, and both players will still be in their homework, most likely, especially Andrey Esipenko, who's playing so fast and choosing a slightly rarer line, but he will have ideas. And yeah, I remember this opening, the Italian game, as we see, just both sides improve their pieces now. The Italian game, when I was young, I used to play it a lot, and I was criticised in the English press by some very prominent journalists. They said, oh, it's a beginner's opening, why is he playing this? He'll never become a strong player if he keeps playing this opening as White. And then now all the top players in the world play it. So
nice.
It's all about fashion.
Payback.
Yeah, I had something similar, actually. I mean, this latest chessball course, I brought out the Harry attack. I came up with this, well, I didn't personally come up with it, but it was an idea that I was playing like 15 years ago, and people just laughed at it. And they just, you know, other grandmasters said this is just absolute rubbish. But then all the top players in the world started playing it again. So it's quite funny. But I'm amazed whoever said that about you is just an idiot, though, because this has been one of the main lines for ages. So I don't know who I insulted there, but I don't really care. So, you know, but it's not true. I mean, everyone's doing this opening now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really caught on fire the last 5 years. I think 2016, Kramnik started playing it a lot with White, and then immediately every grandmaster at the top level was playing it with White and Black.
What do you think the attraction is then? Because it is a slow manoeuvring game. Is it that you can just play a game and you can manoeuvre, you're not in trouble, and you're just basically relying on who's got the better knowledge? Is that why people like it?
Yeah, I think it's all to do with that fighting index that we were talking about. It just leads to fighting chess. No matter what the type of position, there's always life left. And a lot of openings these days, especially the less manoeuvring openings, which are quite direct, they can lead to some forced draws here and there.
Well, the funny thing is, like, a lot of these openings which players at home might think are more interesting, like pawn sacrifices in the opening, they're actually a lot more duller because they've been worked out so deeply. As you say, they lead to draws. So these positions which maybe have a bad reputation are more interesting to play because you don't liquidate so quickly. So yeah, it's maybe the way forwards. And certainly a good opening to learn if you want to improve your opening understanding. I don't know, have you ever played this line, Ivanka?
I have played this line many years ago, but I actually gave it up because I found it too difficult. Too many move orders, too many pieces on the board, and I didn't really have kind of the concrete understanding I needed to have. And I have to say about this game, we now see a bishop trade itself for a knight. So Nepomniachtchi has decided to try to ruin the pawn structure of Esipenko. I have to say that it was kind of an interesting psychological battle at the beginning because Esipenko was the first one to launch what we call a novelty, which is a new idea. But Nepomniachtchi didn't actually seem phased at all and just carried on blitzing out those moves. And now we can see, I think now we can finally see that both players are on their own.
Can I ask, Ivanka, what was the first new move in the game?
So the first new move was actually picking up the queen's pawn from the d6 square and moving it to the 5th.
Yeah, so a new move, but I mean, I've studied that one before. I'm sure these guys have studied it before. It's one of the top computer suggestions. So
Dave, you studied everything.
I mean, some I've studied superficially.
I remember yesterday it was like move 25. You're like, I know that knight d5 was here, and I was looking at the computer and it was like knight d5, and I was like, blooming hell, he's impressing me again. So but yeah, I mean, your knowledge.
I used to work hard on chess, Simon.
Your knowledge impresses me. So yeah.
So I mean, I'm not familiar with this exact position, but the ideas are quite thematic here. And as Ivanka mentioned, the pawn structure has changed. If you look at the C line, black does have 2 doubled pawns there, so long-term weakness, but as compensation, black is relatively active. I'm especially liking the black bishop right now, which is unrivaled. We saw a trade of some bishops. One of the black knights disappeared, but black's bishop is going to look over at that left side of the board at a weak white pawn for a long, long time. So I would say this position, both sides have reasons to be happy, but that is only going to be good for us. It's going to be a real clash of styles, clash of imbalances, because especially while the 2 knights against the bishop and knight combo exists, there's going to be life left.
I have to say, normally I like the double knight combination, but in this particular situation, just like you highlighted, I like the power of the light squared bishop. It's going to be something that might come back to haunt white, especially if the battle develops onto who controls the open D line.
Yeah, and I guess that's why Nepomniachtchi has just jumped in with the white knight. We've talked about this square, the f5 square. Knights on f5 will thrive. And now black has a difficult choice. You want to keep your bishop, ideally, especially if you have ambitious intentions in this game as black. But then again, can you really let that white knight survive? White will have some attacking chances. We talked about rook swinging across the board yesterday quite a lot, and white's rook on the 3rd rank. If you leave that knight alive, if you don't capture it, if you move the black queen, I was about to say, then white's rook at some point later might swing across on the 3rd rank towards the black king. So a bit of a risky decision there by Esipenko, but it shows that he's not scared. If he took that white knight, I think he would have been the one fighting for the draw. Now, very healthy position for black, as long as he takes care of his king.
And do you think, David, that Esipenko needs to decide this in the rapid portion of this semi-final? Do you think Jan will be a big favourite in tiebreaks?
Yeah, I mean, Esipenko, he's a great player. We've seen him progress so much, especially over the last 12 months or so. But at Blitz, he's far less experienced than Nepomniachtchi. Nepomniachtchi is one of the real elite few in Blitz. And I actually played Esipenko myself a few months ago in Blitz. And compared to playing against the top guys, he's not quite there yet. So, yeah, I think if the match goes to Blitz, Nepomniachtchi will be an even bigger favourite than he is right now in the Rapids.
And I actually think right there we're getting an answer to something we've been a little bit curious about, because Esipenko, he's always so fidgety, a lot of energy. And we've seen him sip something from a cup. And I think we could there see that that is coffee. So maybe that is why he is a little bit full of energy while playing these games.
He's playing late in the night.
Yeah, that's true.
So I imagine he needs some caffeine to get him going. Because it is quite, well, I would find it very, very difficult. But I know a lot of chess players are creatures of the night, and they like to stay up until the early hours. And Esipenko actually said it himself. He's a keen follower of football. So he often stays up late to watch those football matches.
Yeah.
But, you know...
I think he might be an Arsenal fan.
Right there, Simon.
Yeah, I think so. I've seen him wear an Arsenal T-shirt. So,
OK.
Yeah, I can actually confirm. I talked to him in Tata Steel, and he said Arsenal, and mostly because of the great Arshavin, great Russian football player.
Can't be good at everything then, can you? So, poor taste.
So...
I've actually played football with him myself, I must say, in the Isle of Man 2019, and he's very good. Yeah, he's tricky. He's got long legs, so he's it's hard to tackle. But...
And Jan's wearing his lucky T-shirt again, we see, so, which has done so well for him so far.
What is it, 5th day in a row now?
Yes, 5th day in a row.
Lucky T-shirt.
Maybe he's got 5 of them.
that could be.
Or you could wash them.
Yeah, you could do, yeah.
But we've learned that chess players, they love their coffee, as we see with Esipenko, but they're also superstitious.
Yeah.
If things are going well, which they have been for Jan, then why change things? And Jan, very impressive so far. He, though, as white, I was about to say, he's been thinking quite a long time. We're not used to that from Jan. Normally he's playing instantly, the one putting the opponent under pressure on the clock. This time, roles have reversed. White is lower on the clock, but this last move, Simon, you must like it. It's going on the attack with white.
I love this, yeah. I mean, it's always great seeing Jan play because he is a very aggressive player at heart. I mean, he's basically a bit of a hacker, and you know, he's like a young Kasparov in many ways with his expressions a lot of the time. He's, you know, similar to Kasparov. He shows his emotions, which gives us a lot of drama. But the way he plays, he sees a king, he goes for the king, and now that rook may well come over and join the attack. And if he can get his queen also pointing towards what could be a hook, we call this pawn in front of the black king a possible hook. It's a possible target. And there was a book called The Art of Attack where the author of this book basically wrote a lot about having a focal point in your opponent's position you've got to aim for when attacking. And you know, I did a chessboard course on this book, so I know it well. And it really is finding a point where you can get into your opponent's position. And that pawn there, which he's now lining up against, so you can see the plan is coming together, is where he's aiming for. So it's a good bit of advice there. Just look for a focal point and try to line your pieces up to start targeting that point. And already here it's a little bit scary, isn't it, for Esipenko?
Very scary.
Yeah, very scary even, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of don't think it's that scary. The reason why I'm going to say it's not that scary because it's really obvious what white is going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious that, like, you know, David's highlighting that h6 pawn is going to be under fire. So therefore, you can take some action against that and then concentrate your action, you know, back to the middle of the board where black is superior.
Yeah, so this is a really instructive move by Esipenko, dropping the queen back, defending the pawn next to it, but also if white's rook swings across, now the pawn can simply step forward. And look at this, indirectly the queen was actually defending this pawn all along. Now the queen defends it, the king defends it, it's defended twice. That means white doesn't have the firepower to go and capture this pawn. It's still a bit scary because white has 4 attackers, these 2 knights, plus a rook, plus a queen, and black only really has 3 defenders right now, the queen, king and bishop. But it looks like it's sufficient. Black's pawn structure is solid enough. So, as Jovanka mentioned, black is planning to just defend for the next few moves with this queen retreat, but then at the right moment, start a counterattack, maybe including against the pawn, maybe jumping forward with the black knight. And if white's attack fizzles out, if the fire stops burning, then, yeah, maybe Nepomniachtchi, he's committed all of his pieces to the wrong side of the board. So, yeah, right now, Nepomniachtchi needs to back up his previous moves with some kind of substance, with some kind of real attack.
Esipenko definitely playing a lot faster than Jan so far this game. With the black pieces, is that surprising him in any way?
Yeah, I mean, it must be part of his strategy. Jan can't be used to that, right? An opponent being quicker than him. Not many people in the world are quicker than Jan Nepomniachtchi. So, yeah, surprising. And also Esipenko, he's had a lot of decisive results in this tournament, but his clock usage has been a bit up and down. I remember him being in time trouble in a couple of games. So maybe it's just part of his strategy. And meanwhile, one move, white's pawn stepping forward, that pawn cannot be captured because black's bishop has to stay defending the black knight.
Yeah, I'm actually incredibly surprised by this move because, yes, it's dynamic, but it does concede a really important square in the middle of the board. And I'm looking at that d4 square. I'm thinking if a rook could find its way down, even better, it would be a knight. And I can just see that it will be an extra benefit that black has in this position. So control of the D line, a great light squared bishop. I'm a little bit concerned for Nepomniachtchi that unless he does something there on the right, he might be burning his bridges.
Yeah, this knight retreat, not a good sign. If you're retreating pieces, the white knight's a bit dominated right now. They're going to have to keep retreating. Simon, a fan of that last move?
No, I mean, I think as soon as you start playing moves like this, it's gone wrong. I mean, I was getting obviously quite excited because I love these attacking ideas, but this queen retreating move that black played was a fantastic move, and it seems just to have stopped all the white's counterplay. And you can often find that these attacks are very premature. And they don't work out very well. And as soon as you start going backwards, you've just lost like 5 tempo. And we can see here that with this last move, black's starting to put pressure on White's queen side, and I'm thinking, this is certainly going Esipenko's way at the moment. Jovanka pointed out this square in the middle of the board, which seems like a long-term target as well, which only Black can come into. Black's double pawns look pretty useful because they cover some central squares as well. So obviously a lot to play for here. There's loads of pieces on the board, but Black Esipenko must be happy with the way it's gone and with the time advantage he still has. Yeah,
not just a time advantage. He's about to win a pawn, and he does win a pawn. That pawn couldn't actually be protected. If we just rewind a couple of moves to show why, the Black Knight jumping forward, this pawn, there's no way to defend it. If you march it forward, firstly, it can get captured by the Black Queen, but Black's Knight is going to jump in with a fork, a double attack. And if you try to protect it with your own pawn, then after a trade, we see that White can no longer capture with his pawn because there's a pin along this A line. So that pawn was doomed. Nepomniachtchi had to move out of the way of a potential knight fork with his queen. And now after knight takes pawn, he simply steps back with his rook. So Black is actually a whole pawn up. And yes, it's not maybe the best pawn in the world, the most attractive pawn in the world, but somehow if you can keep it alive, and as you guys mentioned, if you can use this central outpost for a Black rook, or if you can get the Black rooks to open lines without allowing White any counterplay, then Black is doing great. So right now, a pawn up from Esipenko, and good chances to convert it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we did see the fighting chess index for Andrey Esipenko above 70, right? And we did look at that. He's only played, what was it, 5 draws so far in the tournament in, 19 games or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. You nearly never see those stats at the top level, and especially in the prelims, only 3 draws. Yeah. Yet he was still up there in the top half. So, yeah, fighting player. And we saw his determination to win games. He was always fighting it out to the bitter end, very rarely chickening out with a draw or playing the safe moves, always playing the most ambitious moves. So, yeah, we like to see that.
Definitely.
We do like to see that, and the audience really does appreciate the fighting chess. And because we're just sticking to the chess, today we're asking everyone just to tweet us their chess comments and chess ideas, moves, and we will ask our experts and we will feature them on the show.
Yeah.
So you can do all this via the hashtag #ChessChamps.
Definitely. Would be very interesting to have some move suggestions that we could look into, deep dive a little bit with analysis into some of your suggestions.
Okay, meanwhile, one of the Black rooks does find an open file, hitting White's pawns over there, those loose White queenside pawns. And White had to march one of the pawns up, hitting the Black Knight. And no exchanges. Interesting move there from Esipenko. I must admit, I would have struggled to find a move like that one, putting the knight on the edge of the board. But maybe there are some specific ideas. White's queen can go and grab a pawn back now, maybe. I don't think the White queen's going to go and capture the Black central pawn because the Black knight might jump in with a knight fork. White's rook's actually within range now of the Black knight, so you have to be a bit careful. But White's queen can just kind of zoom up and capture one of the 2 Black doubled pawns. I'm wondering whether Esipenko maybe just, I mean, I just said he was playing the most ambitious moves in every position, but is he maybe just letting the advantage slip a bit and giving back the pawns now?
In some ways, it's a nice move, though, because we pointed out the square in the middle of the board, and the Black Knight is just trying to reroute into that lovely square. So if that knight can, it just takes 2 moves, get right into the centre, White could be in trouble. But White's played the most critical move. He's taken that pawn on c6. So what is his idea here? Is he going to take the pawn on b3, try to win it back, or is he going to potentially keep manoeuvring that knight around? OK, queen d6, that's interesting. Just trying to go for exchange of queens. Still looks really horrible for White, this, to me, because those rooks, the Black rooks, are just, it's a bit like the Benko opening, if anyone knows that opening where you get all this play on the open lines.
I never heard of that even.
The Benko, yeah, named after Mr. Benko, Pal Benko, yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't going good thing it was Benko, yeah. And yeah, it's a really interesting opening where you give up a pawn to get these open lines. And
also, look at these knights. They're not contributing at all. The action's starting to move over towards this side of the board, as you point out, Simon, but White's knights, they're far away. And also, if we remember the aim chess stats that Askil was showing us, endgames. Yeah. Esipenko is ruthless. I think he had 80-something% win rate in endgames once the queens come off. So now the queen exchange might happen at some point, White bringing the rook across to support the White queen. This was important because if White had taken on Black's terms, then suddenly Black's pawns connect to each other, but also big threats. Firstly, of winning a pawn with pawn takes pawn, but also of the knight jumping in to attack the 2 white rooks at the same time. So a really important move there from Jan Nepomniachtchi, defending his queen. And now this other plan that you guys have mentioned, Esipenko, he's kind of finding all the plans and wrapping them together and putting them all into one, because he's dropped this knight back. And now it's about to land in the center of the board, where it will cause some real nuisance.
So is this a situation where the black knight and the black bishop are stronger than the 2 white knights together?
Yes.
Yeah, knights on the rim are dim.
Yeah, and knights on the edge. And in light of the plan that David highlighted of jumping the black knight to the centre, I would be very, very tempted to just pick up my knight that's sitting on the edge, the white knight, move it to the f3 square.
Yeah.
That would be one move that I would consider. And then, or maybe I would try to kind of like do a variation of that, maybe go pawn takes pawn first, you know, because I don't want to give up material, and see what happens then. And now, OK, the knight has returned to the f3 square.
Yep.
So this is very important, because the knight is covering that square, and also maybe in the right circumstance, there's going to be some knight takes pawn in the middle of the board.
Yeah, the knight also eyeing up this guy. So meanwhile, we have seen a trade over here, and the question is, can black just be greedy? And he has gone for it. Greed is sometimes good, and bishop takes pawn. Black is a clear pawn up. I don't see any way for white to win the pawn back. This pawn now, another plus behind black's knight retreat is that it does defend this slightly weak pawn, this isolated pawn. And yeah, these 2 white knights still struggling to get in the game. Nepomniachtchi retreats his queen. He's not out of this one, because if he wins one of these 2 pawns back, he will have a level position, but it's certainly white fighting for his life. This queen retreat does at least hit the black pawn in the center. And black has to find a way to keep these 2 pawns alive. And if he does, I think he's a big favourite to win the endgame.
Wow. Well, just a reminder about the format. The semi-final matches are played in one day, 4 rapid games to decide the winner. And if they are tied, then they head straight to tie breaks with 2 blitz games. And if it's still tied, then we have Armageddon. And in each match, they have 15 minutes in between each games. So hopefully there's going to be chess going on all day, and we're going to try to show and follow as many games and moves as possible in both of these matches. And in the quarterfinals yesterday, we didn't actually have one single tiebreak. So let's see if that's going to happen today. That was surprising. 4 matches, no tiebreaks.
Yeah, we rarely saw that happen last season on the tour, right?
Yeah.
It seems to be tiebreaks in every match.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it feels like we will get them at some point, either in the semi-finals today or maybe even the final, because these players, the last 4, they're all so good.
Yeah.
It's going to be so close.
Yeah, I think this is quite instructive, the way this game's gone wrong, actually, for Jan. And this is kind of a typical mistake that I see a lot of players actually do, especially, you know, club players, that kind of standard, where they take the aggressive onslaught against their opponent's king. And I was, again, myself, quite excited about that. And as Ivanka pointed out, hang on a minute, this is really easy to defend against. And you do these aggressive moves, but you haven't really worked out your opponent's best defence, and you come backwards, you lose all this time, you lose the initiative, and you just have a bad position. So you've really got to attack from a position of strength and make sure you don't get forced back. And it's artificial attacking is just a classical mistake that a lot of people do. They attack because they think it's going to work, but they haven't calculated it, and they just end up going home again. And that's certainly what's happened in this game here.
Yeah, I remember one of my friends on that subject had this little motif. He goes, you shouldn't impose your will on the board. You need to be objective. You need to do what needs to be done. So if the position demands that you're boring, you know, then so be it. Put your boring hat on and make those slow, like, sensible moves. If the position demands that you should initiate chaos, then again, you need to do that. You need to put that hat on and go, hey,
totally agree.
Let's initiate that.
I think you've got to be objective rather than subjective. So even if you're a really aggressive person and you want to take over things and you know, take over the space and the area, you should avoid doing that. And that's something that's gone wrong here. I think, you know, he had to be more objective about his chances and do a slower approach.
Yeah, fair play to Jan, though. He does have a more universal streak to his play than he used to, and he doesn't seem too unhappy. Yes, white is on the defensive. White is just a pawn down, hence the evaluation bar, but he will try and defend. And a really sneaky move there from Esipenko, we got to say, black bringing the rook the whole way down. There was a trap there. If white got tempted to take that black rook, then the white queen would have lost her defender and the white queen would have fallen. So also a trap. Maybe we can show this on the board because it is such a sneaky move. But if we just rewind 2 moves back, black bringing this rook down. If you take the rook, as mentioned, the queen falls. And if you take the black queen, thinking, OK, black is just going to recapture. No, there's what we call an intermediate move. Rook takes rook is a check. And next move, black wins the queen, having pocketed a rook in the process. So instead, we saw Nepomniachtchi not fall for that. And here he just gets his king out of the way. So the queen and rook keep their connection. And now we do see a rook trade. And with the exchanges, who do we think that's going to help? Probably black?
Yeah, I think so.
Makes life easier.
The only danger I can see in black's position is his pawn structure on the king side. So black's pawns are sort of moved a little bit up the board, leaving his 7th rank weak. So if somehow white can bring his rook down to where David's shown there on the board, the king could be, it's a little bit soft, a little bit softer than it'd like to be. So, but other than that, it seems like a fairly straightforward pawn advantage for Esipenko here. And he's pushing that pawn. Past pawns should be pushed.
Reinforcing control over that all-important d4 square, because, you know, the move that I would have loved to have played just now would have been actually to move my rook to the D line, challenge the black queen. But unfortunately, with black's last move, the knight can just sit herself there in the middle, become that famous octo knight, and there's no getting rid of that knight.
Yeah, if you ever try and trade it off, it just gets replaced by a very strong pawn. And these two together just going to hold each other's hand and march down the board. These pawns will win the game for black. And too strong.
Yeah, so obviously, like, Nepomniachtchi is worse. And I'm just wondering whether it's the time is now to kind of initiate, like, swindle mode. Like, you know, and by that, I mean you just play tricky moves, try to do something mysterious on the right side.
I think he's going to try that, Esipenko, because now he's hit the black bishop. But if black plays maybe the most obvious move in the position, bringing the knight in, defending the bishop, then he has to try something against the black king, because if he doesn't, he's just going to get squashed. This pawn is going to start marching down the board. Oof, I don't really see any way out for white. So maybe it is time to go back to plan A. He abandoned this plan long ago, but something to do with the black king, whether that's bringing the knight back to the side and trying to create some sacrifice, open things up, or whether that's pushing Harry, the h-pawn, forward at some point. It feels like he has to do something.
I thought it was a nice trick in the position before that. Well, I don't think it will work because obviously Esipenko is an incredibly strong player. But if you'd have gone h4, h5, you have some queen h6 stupid ideas of, you know, in some random position. But h4, h5 would be a lovely manoeuvre that white could play. But I guess black just stops that pawn in its tracks by meeting that h-pawn moving by blocking it straight away. And I don't see really how that would help the position at all.
Yeah, just to show your idea, there's some knight forks, knight jumping in. Sometimes you can think about a sacrifice and then the knight jumping in with the check. But as you mentioned, this h-pawn push will be blocked by black's h-pawn as well.
But I quite like that h-pawn because it does give, as you mentioned, Simon, earlier, a hook that the white knight sitting on g3, which isn't doing anything, let's face it, gives it something to kind of maybe bite on in the future. And then I'm like thinking, well, what can white do to try to defend this? The knight isn't working. So then the knight on f3 is not working. So maybe that can be moved around, find a better square. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, David.
Yeah. I mean, interesting position. Jan instead lifted his rook up the board, so maybe he's just keeping these in mind for later. And I'm surprised to see Esipenko think maybe he's just choosing between two very attractive moves. He can bring his knight to the centre, as I mentioned earlier, or he can just push this pawn forward. And actually, the more I think about it, maybe this one first is the most effective because it's simply marching down the board. It's going to march even further, and then the queen will come and eliminate white's queen as a blockader. And yeah, this one so close to promotion. Maybe white just has to step this knight back to blockade it, because if you let it march on, it's just going to win the game for black.
I mean, if I was white after c4, I'd just flick in knight h4, and I would just go for the desperado attack. I mean, he's gone c4, so we might see this. And it's like one of those situations where if you don't do something drastic, then you're going to lose. So you have to do something which you wouldn't normally do. You know, you're going to lose. Your opponent's coming into your territory. You need to take some action now. Moving that knight over there. Well, OK, you might be able to sacrifice on g6, bring the other knight in.
Yeah.
But he's gone more defensive.
Yeah,
OK.
no, I like your idea.
If it's going wrong, but maybe this is actually, as David, maybe this is. It's a little bit annoying for black, but...
Yeah, it's annoying, but it's a passive approach. It's defensive.
Passive.
And even if white just plants a knight on this square, black will not actually trade the knights. And I wouldn't be surprised to see black just plonk his knight in the centre of the board anyway at some point. Also, you can never take it now because the queen will open up towards the white king. White is just going to be completely stuck, and black at the right moment will bring the rook into the game. Still, the black king will be a bit weak, but black is definitely in charge.
Yeah, and also I'm really glad that you pointed out the rook moving to the open A line, because white does have ambitions of putting the queen there, but doesn't have the time.
Yeah.
Just black has full control.
Yeah, but I don't know how black's going to deal with his pawn after the knight's moved now in the game. He's got, at least white's got this direct threat here. So what is black doing here, actually?
OK, sorry, he dropped back with the other knight,
Yeah, and because you're threatening to win a pawn in two different ways here, so it is a direct threat at least. So
Can you still put your knight in the centre and just kind of say, hey, got a little pin if you capture that pawn?
But let's see if I can take it, because the rook can back up my knight as well, potentially. So
Really?
is this?
Yeah, this would be really interesting because I guess you guys want to bring the queen here, pinning the white knight. The white knight can't move. And if you defend it, as Simon mentions, then maybe black can reinstate the pin, and so much pressure, everything happening now on the C line.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still very, very messy, but it does look like black might win a piece, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
Some tricks here, maybe, but this is what Andrey Esipenko is calculating right now in the current position. Can he just sacrifice a pawn back to tie up white's pieces? But instead, he plays the safe approach, or, well, I say safe, but you are abandoning your king. You're at least keeping your pawn safe next to the queen. The problem is now you've got to be very, very careful. For example, after knight takes bishop. At the moment, it's fine because the white queen can't jump in with a check because the black knight covers this square. But if white breaks through to the 7th rank now, for example, if the rook somehow gets in, it's going to be deadly. So this one could still turn around. Black a pawn up and probably with an advantage, but white has some hope if he can get to the black king.
The bar did react to Esipenko's last move, down to 0.9 advantage for him. In the other game, the bar has jumped up for Magnus Carlsen. Looking good for the Norwegian in the first game in that semi-final match.
Yeah, and whilst we're waiting for Nepomniachtchi to come up with a move in this difficult position, Rainy Santos does ask us a question. They ask, after over-the-board games, I've noticed some players rearranging the pieces to their original positions except the kings. What does this mean? Except the kings, which is left in the centre of the board. What is the background on this practice?
That's a good question. It's just a practical thing. Normally, when players place the kings in the middle of the board, it's to show the result of the game. So, for example, if the white king is on the light square, or if both kings are on the white squares, it means white won. If both of the kings are on the dark squares, it means black won. If the kings are opposite each other, it means a draw. And actually, when we play chess nowadays on electronic boards, when it's broadcast live on the internet, the moves automatically transmit, but there's no way to show the result. So that's how we do it. We show the result by putting the kings in the middle. And also, we sometimes leave the kings there just to show our kind of other competitors what the result was in the game. Because, for example, you might be fighting for first place in a tournament and you look over and you don't know what result happened.
Yeah.
So just looking at the kings, you know what result went on in that game. And that might influence your own decisions in your own game.
Very clever, actually.
Yeah.
But we don't do that in online chess, obviously. Here it's just clicking a button, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, the results are shown quite prominently when it comes to online chess. And over-the-board chess, not quite the same.
Yeah.
So it's especially useful in team events. So.
Of course, yeah.
Sapling, yeah. Did you hear that story at the British Championships going back, like, I don't know, a long, long time ago, well before we were born, but there was a disgruntled player and he snuck apparently into the tournament hall, and he glued all the kings to the chessboard.
Look at Esipenko.
Sorry.
Sorry, Simon.
right,
Just
yeah.
a lot of
blundered?
movement on Esipenko.
Oh.
What's happening, David?
I don't know.
I think he feels there's a win in the position. He's just getting very, very excited there, as you can see, shaking back and forth. It's not because he thinks he's blundered. It's his move now.
Yeah.
But maybe he thinks there's something strong in the position. I don't see it immediately yet. Maybe it involves pushing this black pawn forward. Maybe it involves bringing the black knight to the centre of the board. But he feels something in the position. His instincts are tingling, his spidey senses, as I sometimes say. And I can't wait to see what he has in store, because he clearly has something in mind. And now he's into calculation mode. You see how he's bobbing up and down. He's going, OK, this move, then this move, then this move.
Oh.
They're shaking his head. He's like, oh, maybe it's not so clear. And now he played the safety first move. So, oof.
With 2 minutes left on the clock, look at this. Esipenko, he is feeling the nerves.
Definitely heating up now. And after the knight takes bishop, the pawn recaptures the knight. As we mentioned, white's queen cannot go up and checkmate the black king yet. But still, that black king not feeling entirely safe. I mean, this is getting really double-edged. Let's ignore the evaluation bar for now, which thinks black is completely winning, because it's not that simple. Black's king is going to come under some kind of attack.
Isn't he just going to queen this b pawn?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see anything white can do. You can bring your queen in with a check up at some point, but you're not going to do any damage just with the queen.
Black is not going to let you. That's the problem, isn't it?
I was thinking if you try to get your rook in now, you have to try and get to the black king, because that b pawn is just going bang, bang, queen. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But if you try that, maybe I can just block with a knight. I mean...
OK, let's try and keep an eye on the players as we show this. But right now, as mentioned, the queen coming up, right?
Well, I thought maybe you swing the rook over.
Are you swinging the rook over this way?
Yeah, then I just block with the knight in the centre where I want to put my knight.
Ooh, OK.
And if your queen comes in, I don't think I'm too worried, because my queen can always come back, and it's just one check. Because
where are you going with the black king? I would be a bit worried here, Simon. I don't know.
Just go back.
To the corner, I guess?
Anywhere.
To this square. Maybe now I'm jumping in with the knight, hitting this pawn, threatening some checkmates.
OK, we have to change our minds then. Not that square.
Because now,
I think
if the pawn takes knight, this is going to end in checkmate.
Queen f8 or something seems...
OK, in this position...
then you bring the
Then I just
over,
maybe take this
knight
pawn
takes
with
pawn.
Oh,
knight
nasty. Yeah,
check. There's tricks in the position. Now, black's queen will get deflected away from the protection of its rook. This would be a check, and suddenly things turn around. So black has to be really careful. For example, after this rook move you mentioned, maybe the idea is to just lift this rook up first, just to guard the 7th rank. And then if the queen jumps in the whole way, now you block. And now at least this rook can't come in. But then again, there's going to be checks.
Still tricks, yeah.
Still tricks. For example, just to show the check, and then the rook swinging across this way, it got blocked going up the board. So now it comes across the board. Nepomniachtchi right now calculating all of these possible moves. I think in the current position, he's looking at 2 moves. Either bringing his queen up the board to try and go for this pawn, or, OK, the move you suggested has been played, this rook across, and it's tricky for black. Still some hard work to be done to win this game. The evaluation bar says, OK, it's winning for black. As you guys mentioned, this pawn is just going to make a new queen and win the game. But first, you have to defend.
So if you try the same line but put your king in the corner, that's probably a lot safer. Yeah. So I need to block your rook out, definitely, because I've got to try to keep out your pieces. But yeah, it's much more dangerous than I thought with this very clever knight jump that white's got. But I guess I have to go in the corner then, so I can try going this way.
But if you go to the corner, maybe the queen can swing across.
OK. We're going to find out the answer.
I see it, yeah.
Now this pawn under attack, this pawn under attack. It's not entirely clear.
Look at the bar.
Exactly. From a human point of view, with 2 minutes left on the clock, you're the one being attacked. It's not easy. With computer precision, black is winning. But these guys aren't computers. These guys are humans.
He's got under 2 minutes to find the right solution as well after this. So.
My suspicion is that the black king, has to accept that maybe it's going to go on a run.
Yeah.
And find solace.
Yeah.
No one wants to be involved in a king run, because basically you're walking a tightrope. One mistake and that's it. You could be checkmated.
I mean, it's probably, I guess, in that last line, I mean, there's ways you can bring your black queen back to defend, and there should be some way to do it, but it's dangerous, and we're going to find out.
Yeah, we're going to find out. There's 3 sensible moves. Oh, which way is he going with the king?
He's put his king on the the bad square.
But now the knight comes in and white is completely winning. Now this knight move, sacrificing the knight, wins for Nepomniachtchi.
Wow.
Because after pawn takes knight, this is just going to end in checkmate. The rook's swinging across this way. And will the players react? I don't think they've spotted this. This is exactly what we showed a few moments ago.
Yeah.
If the pawn doesn't capture the knight, if the queen drops back,
Yeah.
then the knight sacrifices itself.
Wow.
And if the king goes to the corner,
must have
it's
seen
checkmate.
it.
He's seen
He
it.
must have seen it, yeah. And he's played it. But what about Andrey's reaction here? It's incredible. He must now realise, hang on.
He's going to react. Let's look at the players' faces. Nepomniachtchi suddenly looking much happier.
look at
And
that, yeah.
Dear.
Yeah.
What a turnaround.
Esipenko realises
What a turnaround.
that he's blundered and it's all been in vain.
yeah,
Gosh.
that's how quickly things can change. Just one wrong move, especially when your king is open, when there's no defensive pieces around your king. I mean, things will change 360 if you just take your eye off the ball for one move. That's what he did, and poor guy, head in his hands now. It's too late as well. There's no turning back. Checkmate is threatened. White's queen is going to swing across. Black is going to have to give up some material to try and...
Well, at least he can feel better after this game knowing that I fell for the same trick.
Yeah.
That's not going to make him feel better, obviously. I'm just saying that'll make him feel a lot worse. But it's incredible, actually, how this has turned on this move. Yeah.
And taking under 1 minute.
It's why you have to be
so
so
careful,
careful when it comes to king safety.
And also, psychologically, he's been in control as Black the whole game. He's had the advantage the whole game, and just one move.
It's the worst way to lose when you're actually being controlling the game. You played a really nice game. You've been outplaying your opponent, which he has done.
Look at him, yeah.
And you suddenly lose. That is the worst way to lose. It's a lot less painful if you've been outplayed most of the game because you never thought you had a chance. But when you get your expectance up to win and suddenly bang, you've lost something, it is really heart-wrenching and it's a horrible feeling.
And 20 seconds for Esipenko. Magnus Carlsen has won the first game against Artemiev. And this one, is it over for Esipenko or can he still save a draw?
It's not over yet. Still some chances. I quite like his last move with the Black Queen. It took me a while to spot that one as well because now White's queen cannot swing across. The Black Queen keeps the 7th rank guarded, but White can just step back with the queen, as I was going to say, and take this pawn. And look at this, lined up against the Black King now on this diagonal. There's some deadly discovered checks if the White knight moves out of the way, and also Black's knight in the middle of the board is hanging. So this one, I think Jan's got it in the bag. Just needs to be a bit accurate over these next few turns. The Black knight retreating now. Okay, Esipenko, he's fighting. He is a fighter, as we saw on the chess index, and he's trying his best. He's destabilizing the White Queen now. The White Queen can maybe just take a step back on the diagonal, start attacking some of these Black pawns that are undefended near the Black King. It's still difficult. White is completely winning now, but some accuracy is needed. We've seen one turnaround. Jan will try and make sure we don't see another one.
Wow. Oof. You got a feel for Andrey Esipenko. Look at him, shaking his head, just so frustrated that he's maybe threw it away, and the clock is ticking so fast for him as well.
Yeah, it always ticks faster when your heart is beating, when there's been a big turnaround, been a big blunder. Somehow the seconds just tick away instantly. And this last queen move does threaten checkmate in 2 moves, with the queen going and taking a pawn in front of the Black King. So Black has to stop that. Black blocks and attacks the White Queen in the process. So the queen steps forward, and now there's a big threat in the position. White actually just wants to bring the rook across and capture Black's dangerous pawn on this left side, deflecting away the Black Queen, because then the White Queen will sneak in with a checkmate. Black's queen is the only defender, so it has to stay on the 7th rank. There was a sneaky check. White blocks. And the other threat is...
The other major threat, just bring the 3rd piece into the attack, and the queen and knight combine so well when attacking. But if you can get the rook to the 7th rank, which I think is his next move, it's over.
It is over. I mean...
No way to stop it at all.
Yeah.
That next rook move.
Yeah.
The tragedy is you can't even give up your queen for material banking on the passed pawn. Instead.
This is the best shot, but now the rook can certainly try to get in somewhere. There's even the flashy move here, bringing that down to the 6th rank, where the queen might be able to take it. Just you're threatening to capture the knight. That could be the killer blow, actually, here.
You could also bring it to the 7th rank. That would cost Black the queen. I think there's a few moves that win here. But, OK, Jan still needs to show some accuracy. The evaluation bar says a crazy number for White, and it is winning for White, but one wrong move, and that Black pawn does make a new queen. So Jan, with 2 minutes left, needs to find a move. I think one of those 2 rook moves. You could even just move the rook across 1 square to hit the Black Queen.
That's cold, David.
Just move the rook.
Cold-blooded,
So
and trying to destabilize the black queen or hit it or deflect it away, because the black queen is the only defender of the black king right now.
He's got 1 minute 40, and Esipenko's only got 11 seconds as well, so he might as well use his time here just to find the best way to finish it off, I guess.
Yeah.
I think the best one is just to move the white rook across one square. When OK, he does this. When the black queen moves, I'm expecting it to move. It still needs to protect the knight in the centre. Then you can take black's pawn. And
actually, can you not win the queen as well?
OK, stepping back, how will you...
Oh, no, not stepping back, stepping forward to the d6 square, sorry.
Which piece?
I was just going to... OK, don't worry.
OK, very complicated stuff there. And there we see the evaluation bar not liking what Jan's done, actually.
Yeah.
Black found the only move. We see the stockfish moves there, 3 suggestions. Black found the only move to keep the game alive. And now the black rook has come across and it's a turnaround. Look at this, counter-attack. And the computer confirms.
Incredible.
Black is alive. What a move.
Yeah.
It's still tricky for black, but Esipenko finding the only defence with... He had 7 seconds on his clock.
Yeah.
Would you have found that? I think I would have struggled. And white's queen was under fire, black's queen was under fire, but a queen trade would actually help black, whose pawn on the left side would have run through and won the game. So suddenly, all 3 results are possible again. And Jan wasting a move. He brought his rook up. His rook goes up again.
And
now
Andrey
black's
is
knight steps
reacting.
back, defending.
Kind of seems like a draw is probably the fair result now. After they both had their chances, get some peace on the board, take the draw. And after knight d7, well, there's probably a chance it could be a draw here, actually. I mean, but, well, I don't know.
I don't know. We mustn't forget that black has a
big
killer there on
He has.
b3.
But they both had chances here.
They did.
And just great defence there from Esipenko, though, to stay in the game.
Yeah, and right now, if the rooks come off the board, white is still a pawn up, black's king is still weak, but it's all about that black pawn on the left side of the board, 2 squares away from promoting.
When can he move it?
He's going to hope soon. He's been stopped from moving it for the last 10 or so moves, but as soon as white starts running out of threats, which he's about to, then that black pawn is going to motor forward and sprint towards becoming a new queen. Jan, as white, has stopped that from happening, black's pawn running, by creating threats every single move. But he's defended Esipenko.
Well, what does white actually play here? Because, I mean, you really don't want to swap the rooks off because, well, you might have to go into an ending, actually. But,
could you do that?
I don't know.
Could that be the fail-safe, like swap everything off and then let the white knight... OK, he has.
The question was, what else? And look at this last move by Esipenko, giving up the black knight. But if white's queen goes and captures that knight, then the black queen jumps forward with a check, taking that white pawn on the second rank, and white has no chance of winning that game.
And if you take the queens off, and I mean, that's very risky because that b pawn is so strong, but you can try queen takes queen and bring your knight back.
I think that's the only way to try and win the game, but...
Yeah, it looks... The b pawn, I think, is just too far advanced, so maybe this will actually now just peter out, so...
if the queens do come off...
Well,
he's
queen
taking the
takes
draw.
knight.
A draw is about to happen, black giving up a knight, but now the white king cannot escape the checks. So black's queen can just continue checking forever. And look at this, the evaluation bar thinks maybe black has an advantage.
Really?
Oof, I don't believe that. I think...
Queen and knight are so strong in such positions. I mean, you could maybe try b2, but your king surely can't run away out of this.
Well...
OK, he goes for the draw. No way out for the white king. Both sides shaking their head.
Yeah.
Fair result in the end, but what a fight.
Yeah.
That was a really good fight, yeah.
What a start to this semi-final match. A draw between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Andrey Esipenko in the first game. Their second game will start in 15 minutes, but the second game between Magnus Carlsen and Vladislav Artemiev will...